Okay, how are you, Carlos?
I'm excellent. Joel, thank you so much for joining us. This is an absolute thrill for me. I have lots of your books. I got them scattered around the studio, and these books have always been there. Every time I want to pull something up for a student, I have it at the ready. It's become a part of my playing and my routines, and we've got ambidexterity here ready to go. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you again for joining us. And I wanted to know a couple things before we got started here, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, so how many books have you written?
Okay. Whoa. I've written, I guess I've written, I mean, I don't keep count anymore. The thing is that I've written about, I guess, about 150 drum books, and I'd say about 60 or 70 have gone out of print over the years. So I have about 80 or so in print now.
Okay.
Remember, I started way back in the 60s. But I write a lot of other books. I write children's books. I do all kinds of other things, articles. So, I mean, I've written a lot of those also. But as far as drum books, about 150. First of all, I mean, I wanted you to highlight this book because I've done, most of the books that I've done are what I feel are an improvement on books that have been done before.
Okay.
But there's a certain group of books I've done that are totally original in the sense that there are no other books that contain that material. And in a sense, it's those books that I'm most proud of.
Okay.
Because they're totally original. And this is one of these books that you won't find another book like this on the market. There is absolutely nothing around like it. And like it says, it's the holy grail for total independence at the drum set.
Right.
When you finish this book in the 11 different ways, I guarantee you'll have coordination that you never had before. You'll be able to do things, whether it's rock or jazz or anything else, in ways that you never imagined you could do it.
Okay.
I mean, the control you'll gain is incredible. Not only that, I don't think of it as just a drum book in a sense. I think of it as a kind of game book because you don't have to be at the drums. You could play it anywhere you are. You can tap it on your knees.
Right.
You could tap it on the table, and it's kind of fun, to really overcome each of these exercises. So this is not a beginner's book, obviously.
Right.
I consider it a book for intermediate, advanced, and professional players.
Okay.
And of course, it's difficult. Like I say, the difficulty is not in the reading, so that the reading is so simple, even a beginner in 6 months, for instance, could understand the book. It's the difficulty is in working it up so that you could have fun playing it slowly and really just trying to work it up. I do this myself when I feel like I'd like to just keep up my independence.
Something that I love too, just from working that first line, is that, and this, because I'm a drum instructor, so this is the kind of thing that I'm always talking to my students about when it comes to independence. Just playing it is not enough. For those eighth notes, let's say for the first part, you need to, oh, bless you. You need to be able to keep steady bounces, right? So that right hand, I'm gonna play it here. That right hand, for example, those need to be very steady eighth notes.
Of course.
Right, and you need to be ready to switch. Not just switch and push it out, but switch and have the limb take over that steadiness. So I'm thinking about the pattern, but my other hand should be thinking about bounce, 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 bounce.
That's it. That's it. I mean, well, I'm sure you're an excellent teacher, Carlos.
Thank you.
I mean, you got the idea.
That's great. All right, so
I think I'll come and take some lessons.
yes, you're gonna have to fly over the pond, as they say. But I would, you know, I actually have a student in the UK.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yes, I do all my lessons online, which gives me the ability to teach people anywhere. And she, I don't remember exactly where she lives. It's not, I think it's not close to London, but she does live in the UK, and she's a fantastic student. She just turned 71.
Well, you know, she'll catch up to me soon.
Yeah.
She's got another, what, 14 years to go.
I want to ask you, Joel, when did you start playing the drums?
Oh, goodness.
How old were you?
Well, I was really around 10 years old. Basically, that was it. You know, I always wanted to learn an instrument, Carlos, but the problem was I came from a really poor family and with an absent father.
Wow.
And, you know, my mom went out to work all the time, and she just made enough really pay the rent and feed us. So I went out when I was like about 9 years old. I was delivering papers, saving money or what have you. I always wanted some instrument. So I saw this used drum set in a shop. It wasn't that I was looking to play drums necessarily. I wanted to play an instrument. But there was this used drum set in a shop, and it was like about 40 pounds. I don't remember, but I had saved that enough money. And I went in, and I simply bought the set. And I brought it home. I mean, my mother was working. She didn't even know.
She didn't know.
And she came home, and, you know, there's an old story that says, you know, the first time a kid gets a drum set will be the last time he ever gets a drum set.
Correct.
You know, and yeah, I mean, when I got it, I mean, my mother wasn't home, but if you think I knew what I was doing, I didn't. I
Sure.
just set it up and started banging away. I had no idea. I can't say the neighbors were very happy with me. And when my mother came home, she nearly threw a fit. What on earth is this? You know, and I was lucky she didn't throw out the drum set with me along.
Right.
But, you know, she kind of thought, she always thought that I was a child prodigy. You know, that's every
Cool.
mother thinks that their kid is a child prodigy.
Yes.
In truth, I was a complete pain in the rear end. So that's what I was a prodigy for. Anyway, she said, well, look, if you want to have the set, great, but I can't afford to give you lessons. You'll have to pay for them yourself. Well, in the shop where I bought the set, they had a teacher there, a drum teacher. So I went back to the shop. It was about $3 a lesson, if I recall. Okay. And I don't recall that well, because at this point, at 85, I can hardly recall what I had for breakfast. So I went back to the shop, and I started taking lessons once a week from somebody named Billy Machetto. And he was a very good teacher. And also over the next year or so, he didn't realize it, but he probably became a sort of father figure because of my absent father. So that's my beginning. You're asking me when I started. That was the beginning of it all. And then from there, after about 2 years, you know, I was about 11 or so. And I have to say, this became my thing. You know, I went to school till 3 o'clock. I came out, I delivered orders, worked in the bookshop. I did all kinds of things till about 6 o'clock. I came home and I had supper quickly, 6 to 6:30 or so. And then I used to practice, God knows, up until during the week, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. On the weekends, I putting in 5-7 hours a day. So by the time, really, I was 13 years old or so, I have to say, I mean, I knew what I was doing. And I got together a little group, and we played, and that's how it all got started. And then I started putting in an advert to teach, and I would teach out of the books that I was taught from. So or I was being taught from, because I continued to take lessons from all the various teachers around town. And that's how it began. You know, a kid would come to me, he'd have a problem. There wasn't a book around that covered that. So I started writing out things just like teachers on any instrument.
Yeah.
They would write things for a particular problem for a particular kid. And gradually I got stuff together, and I got a book together. And one of the teachers I was seeing at the time was Sam Ulano, and he wrote many books. I took this book to him. I said, "Here, Sam, I wrote a book. What do you think of it?" He thought it was great. It was called Phrasing Drum Solos. It was a jazz book. There was nothing around like it at the time. It was a book that showed how to play 4-bar measures of in trade fours. But if you were playing in 4/4 time, the solo would be in 5/4 time or in 7/4 time.
Wow.
So that you're playing kind of across the bar line.
Right.
He thought the book was great. And he said, don't bother sending it to a publisher. Just print it up and publish it yourself. I'll take some copies and use it. I'll give you names of other teachers, and you send them a free copy and tell them I told you to do that. And that's what I did. He started taking copies. I started taking copies around to the various drum stores in New York. I sent copies to people across the United States whose names I got. I started getting orders from them.
That is great.
And, I mean, that's how it all began, if that's what you want, in an encapsulated form.
No, I love that. I mean, I have started writing something of my own book. I actually wrote a book that was just simply designed to explain rhythm to new students, especially really young students. And I called it Understanding Rhythm. Like simple, just start with quarter notes. And I made the book very easy to read. And any student that I got, because I've had students as young as 5 and 6, and it's much better if they sit down with their parents and go through a book like that and really take their time just to start to understand the language, quarter notes, quarter rests, half rests, right? And so it's kind of similar in the sense that I was writing this stuff out for my students until eventually it suddenly turned into a book, and then all I had to do was, compress it into an actual book and then make it available for my students. So it becomes it becomes a necessity, like just to help push things along with your students and give them something to do as homework, and then you're not eating up the time during the lesson.
Yes, it's a very personal kind of book,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of those, on the market. And the problem is that, yeah, there is no problem. I mean, that's the way you begin. And for 5 and 6 year olds, that's not easy, because really, I'm not a great believer in having a kid 5 years old start. Now, there are exceptions, without a doubt. I'm not saying every kid.
Yeah.
But if a parent brings an ordinary kid and most kids have talent to me, at 5 years old, and let's assume he's got an average intelligence, an average talent, whatever it is, I would say, look, the best thing to do, as far as I'm concerned, that was me, is let the kid listen to as much music as possible.
Right.
Encourage him. You want to get him a little drum set, by all means, and sit down and play. But to take formal lessons, unless you don't mind sending him and he just has fun with the teacher, and whatever he picks up great. Because if you want to start formal lessons, he's got to learn how to read music. That's the key to being able, that opens the door,
right,
to being able to play any book, anything, you know, I mean, you want to get a book on rock, on jazz, you've got to understand notes. And they don't, and the breakdown of notes has to do with fractions.
Yeah.
At 5 years old, they don't know fractions.
Right.
So, I mean, I would have thought that a better time would be 7 years old. To me, 7 years old, he's already been in first grade, second grade. He knows wholes, halves, quarters. When you talk about notes, you can talk about it in those terms.
Yeah.
And so I think that it becomes clearer. But let me emphasize again, I mean, a 4-year-old, you know, there are these special kids. Look, you see kids 3 years old and you can't believe it. Buddy Rich, I mean, everyone's going to point out Buddy Rich. But then again, Buddy Rich came from a family, they were all musical. It was a vaudeville act or what have you. He was part of the act. Those are exceptional kids. So if you get an exceptional kid, I don't say, tell him to wait till he's 7.
Correct.
Do what you can with them.
Right.
But exactly what you can do with them, I'm not sure. And I admire, I have to say, I greatly admire teachers who are able to work with 5-year-olds and teach them how to play the instrument. Well, I don't know. If they're in kindergarten, you know, think about it. When you're in kindergarten, first grade, what are they learning? They're not learning formally. They're usually learning, they just kind of bang on a drum. Someone else hits something else.
Yeah,
and they sing along with the piano as the teacher plays. It's that kind of thing. So that's what most kids. But if you can take a 5-year-old and get them to start learning it, and I'm sure you can. I mean, you have to go over it. What you'd have to do with, let me put it this way, what you'd have to do with a 5-year-old in 6 months, you could probably do with a 7-year-old in less than 6 weeks.
Correct.
That's the way I see it.
So,
but that doesn't mean, so I think 7 years old is a great age to start on any instrument. I'm not talking about prodigies. Most of us, unfortunately, are not prodigies, regardless of what my mother did think.
Correct. I am most certainly not a prodigy, and I don't think my mother thought that I was either. I think she was probably brutally honest,
really?
Especially at the beginning. But so my favorite experience, I've had lots and lots of students throughout the years, and I have a handful of experiences with younger students who stayed on. So I have a student who, he's like 11 now, 11 or 12. And I had him when he was 6. He had just turned 6 and he started taking lessons. And he wasn't a prodigy, but he just had work ethic. I mean, imagine a 6-year-old with work ethic. Like, I would tell him to do something, and once he understood what to do, he would start doing it, and he would not stop. I could say nothing for 10 minutes, and he would just keep going with like a smile on his face, like he just was doing it. And so even though it took me, like you said, 6 months to teach something that might take 6 weeks, because he had that work ethic, I just let him slowly discover this thing on his own, and I would just guide him down the path. Then around 7 or 8, like you said, he started to really get it, and we could talk about the fractions, and we could talk about the rhythms and how they work together. And now, I mean, like I said, he's 11 or 12. I have watched this kid go from a little kid to like he's almost a teenager, and he's this tall now, and he is playing song after song after song, and I write the beat for him, because I remember I teach online, so I write it all digitally. And I'll say, okay, here's the beat, and I'll write it up and I'll put it on for him, and it's a brand new beat he's never seen, and it's in 6/4 or whatever, and he just sits there with his work ethic and figures it out, and is playing, 10-minute rock ballads, in a matter of weeks, and it's just spectacular to see. So that's one of my favorite, memories.
Yes, that's very nice. I don't know if the let's hope he's in a private house and not in an apartment house, because
Yes.
the memories of the other people in the house may not be quite like yours.
Yes, a lot of memories like this under the covers. All right, Joel. So our 30 minutes is up. I appreciate this so much. It flew by, but I really, really appreciate you joining us. Like I said, I will have links and everything to this book and every other book of yours. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it, Joel.
And thank you so much for having me, Carlos.
All right, we'll talk again soon, I hope.
I look forward to it.
All right, take care.
Bye.